Hey guys, Dave here from Wolf in the Wild Survival. Today we're talking about caribou moss. Some of you might possibly know what I'm talking about, and when I show it to you, you're probably gonna, oh, yes, I've walked across that. I know, it grows in abundance in my area. It's everywhere, so it's not hard to find, especially in large quantities. If it doesn't grow in your area, you know what? You're not really missing out on much. It really doesn't have a flavor at all. It has no flavor really at all. And the texture really isn't that pleasing. It's very, very gritty. Almost sandy in a way, but it's not hard like sand. It's like a soft, gritty, sandy kind of thing. So not the best thing to eat. But to bulk up a meal of wild edibles or wild game that you've harvested, it definitely has its place. It's about 90% or so carbs, which can be difficult to come by in the wilds, and that is somewhat important. So it is a good thing to know about, even though it's not very tasty, it's not very good to eat. But it definitely has its place in survival food. So let me just grab a hunk of it here off the ground. Sort of a white, gray. Now sometimes this is called reindeer moss or reindeer lichen or caribou lichen. I just call it caribou moss. First things first, when you pick it up off of the bare rock, usually it's going to be full of dirt. You're going to have to pick bugs and squishy, mushy parts out, and you're going to have to wash all of the dirt out of it. And then, when all of that's done, you have to boil that in 3 changes of water. And you have to let it boil for probably 4 or 5 minutes each time. It's got some bad compounds in it that you don't want to eat. It's going to cause you a lot of stomach upset, vomiting, diarrhea. It's really not a good idea to eat this without properly preparing it first. But if you boil it in at least 3 changes of water for 4 or 5 minutes each boil, a rolling boil, 4 or 5 minutes of rolling boil each time, then it becomes perfectly edible and very, like I say, very, very good source of carbs. And it will bulk up practically any other wild edible or, whatever. To actually make a good meal out of it, you will not go to bed hungry. Now, as for it growing in abundance, let me just get around the other side of the camera here. And all those white patches along the bare rock face here, that's all caribou moss. The green, I believe, is sphagnum moss, but growing all over the place around the sphagnum is caribou moss. So it's not tasty. It's not incredibly easy to prepare. It's pretty easy, but it is somewhat time consuming, depending on the weather, the temperature outside. It could take a while to get a pot of water up to a rolling boil. You gotta cut firewood and get the fire going the whole nine. It's not necessarily the easiest wild edible. You can't just pick it and eat it or anything too quickly. But and oddly enough, when I did one of my meals for the 7-day survival challenge, I got a bunch of the moss and I added frog legs and lemon pepper and did it all together. And oddly enough, it tasted practically identical to Campbell's chicken noodle soup. It just had that grainy, gritty kind of texture to it that chicken soup doesn't, but this does. Other than that, I mean, I could have swore that I was eating Campbell's soup broth. And trust me, I did not go to bed hungry that night by any stretch. You know, that really bulked up that meal. And I mean, a couple of frog legs wasn't really that much. I probably would have went to bed hungry. But adding caribou moss to the mix and, you know, spicing it up a little bit made a really good meal. I have to say, I enjoyed that. So, yeah, it's got its place amongst the survival foods. It definitely does. So I hope you guys enjoyed that one. That's all I got for you today. But, hey, we got more coming, so stay tuned. I'll see you in the next video. Until then, stay wild.